Hello, pleased to meet you. My name is Will, and I am a little bit of a germaphobe. I wanted to do my part and help out provide accurate information in regards to making homemade hand sanitizers. Just like you, I have gone through countless of articles and videos on how to create such sanitizers. Some recipes out there are effective, while some are not. So, how do you know which ones are good and which ones are bad? In this video, we will go ahead and follow the guidelines of the CDC, as well as understanding the formula of making their recommended hand sanitizers. We will also explore other options if you are missing critical ingredients in making homemade hand sanitizers. During the onset of coronavirus here in the United States, I have followed numerous recipes for homemade sanitizers that I had read online and from friends and family without fully comprehending whether it would work or not. Needless to say, I have made a few batches of ineffective hand sanitizers. As we are currently in the midst of quarantine, practicing social distancing, and shortage supplies, it can get challenging in making our own hand sanitizers. But, as you already know, thoroughly and vigorously washing your hands for 20 to 30 seconds with soap and water is still your best line of defense against coronavirus. In this video, I will show you how easy it is to make them, as well as providing other alternatives if you're unable to find such ingredients. So, let's begin. The recommended recipe is 2 parts alcohol and 1 part emollient, such as glycerin or aloe vera gel. But this is the important part. For the 2 parts alcohol and 1 part emollient to work, the percentage of your alcohol's final concentration needs to be 60% and above. The reason your alcohol needs to be a minimum of 90% is because once you dilute it with your emollient, your alcohol content goes down. In this case, your 90% initial alcohol content becomes 60% by following the 2 parts alcohol and 1 part emollient formula. The CDC recommends that hand sanitizers to be at a minimum of 60% alcohol for it to be effective at destroying bacteria and viruses. Here is the World Health Organization's recommended hand rub formulations. This is for a large 10-liter production. As most of us will be making these for ourselves, friends, and family, we will go ahead and scale this down from 10 liters to 100 milliliters. Here is a chart showing the exact measurements you will need from 90% all the way to 99% alcohol content. Here is a chart showing the final alcohol contents if you follow the 2 parts to 1 part formula. The math goes like this. 99 over 100 multiplied by 2/3 equals 198 over 300, which equals to 66% alcohol. As you can see, this is why the World Health Organization is recommending we use 90% alcohol and above. Anything less than that, you will not have an effective 60% final alcohol content. Right now, it's difficult to find 99% rubbing alcohol. However, if you are able to find a distillery or specialty liquor store, then you can find vodka with very high alcohol content, such as Everclear. This is actually vodka but referred to as grain alcohol. There's one at 190 proof. To figure out the alcohol content of a 190 proof grain alcohol, you just divide it by 2. In this case, 190 proof is 95% alcohol. This type of alcohol is called ethyl or ethanol, which is the alcohol you find in liquor. I do not have a 99% rubbing alcohol, so I will use my 95% grain alcohol. By following the guide from the World Health Organization, I will do the following with our scaled 100 milliliter hand sanitizer recipe. Because not everyone has the tools to perfectly measure the amount of liquid we are putting in, just follow this as a rule of thumb. It's best to be putting a bit more alcohol while putting a bit less with the emollients, hydrogen peroxide, and distilled water. We will now go ahead and make a hand sanitizer with 95% grain alcohol. Before we continue, I will show you that we actually have two options. We can choose to put hydrogen peroxide or not. I will discuss the reason later in the video. Notice that I rounded the numbers. Again, when it comes to the alcohol, I rounded up, whereas with the non-alcohol ingredients, I rounded down. Alright guys, here we go. We're about to make our own homemade hand sanitizer. Here are our three main ingredients. I will be skipping out on the hydrogen peroxide because we will just be creating a very small solution. First up is the Everclear 190 proof, which is 95% alcohol. Next one is an emollient, which is an aloe vera gel. The World Health Organization recommended that we use a humectant, which is glycerin or glycerol. Unfortunately, I don't have that. But the WHO mentioned that if we don't have it, we can use some type of emollient. In this case, it's aloe vera gel. And finally, distilled water. This will dilute the very strong 95% grain alcohol so that it won't dry out our hands as much. And here are the tools we'll be using. I have a mixing bowl, a funnel, mixing stirrer, which is just a plastic spoon, 1 teaspoon measurement spoon. I have a 125 milliliter beakers. Finally, our, if you can reach to, a spray bottle that we're going to put our hand sanitizer in. And before I continue, I've heard that micellar and fractionated coconut oil are also humectants. I'm not quite sure if they're actually good replacements to replace glycerin or glycerol. If anybody knows, please let me know. Thank you. Since anything under 90% alcohol won't be effective, will you be able to use a 70% isopropyl alcohol? Great news. Yes, you can. First, let's see what happens if we follow the 2-to-1 ratio. 70 over 100 multiply 2/3 equals 140 over 300, which equals to 0.46, which is about 47% alcohol. As you can see, that will definitely not work. 46% is definitely not effective. However, instead of using a 2-to-1 ratio, you will be doing a 9-to-1 ratio. So 9 parts alcohol and 1 part emollient. And before I continue, I'd like to give a disclaimer. Depending on the sensitivity of your hands, please understand that the following options are for educational purposes only. We are now leaving the World Health Organization's recommendations as we are now working with the most basic of ingredients. And as we are in the middle of a pandemic and dealing with supply shortages, our primary concern is getting rid of potential coronavirus residing in our hands while we are outside our homes and do not have access to soap and water. The primary purpose of this video is understanding our health officials' recommendations as well as harm reduction education with the tools that we do have readily available. So please, practice good judgment as you are the only person who understands the sensitivity of your hands. With that said, here is the formula for 9 parts alcohol and 1 part emollient and an optional hydrogen peroxide. As we followed the World Health Organization's instruction in doing their handrub formula with 91 to 96% alcohol, the formula with an alcohol with 70% is literally the same. You're just putting a bit more alcohol and not diluting it with distilled water. The one difference about this formula with the 7% and everything else that's under 90% alcohol is that you're using a lot more alcohol with just a tiny bit of emollient, such as aloe vera gel, or humectant, which is glycerol or glycerin. So it is best to moisturize your hands with hand creams or Vaseline. They're way better than lotions as they are thicker and more efficient. Plus, it's just good practice. If you will, especially now during the time of coronavirus, you will probably constantly be washing your hands with soap and water. Water itself can dry your hands, as soap as well. And with alcohol, that's like a triple threat to your hands. So you got to make sure to take good care of your hands as well. Because if you don't, cracks will start happening, and it will make it easier for bacteria and viruses to reside on your hands, and it's going to be a little bit harder to rub them off or like scrub them off with soap, water, or alcohol-based hand sanitizers. And also, since we're in this topic, we got to talk about your fingernails. I know some of you guys and gals probably have long fingernails. You may want to consider maybe cutting them off just for now. It's just easier to clean your fingernails if they're not long. But that's just my opinion. I'm no doctor. Okay, that's it. The reason for adding 3% hydrogen peroxide is that it only kills any remaining spores that could be introduced in your ingredients and or on your equipment. Hydrogen peroxide is not an active ingredient to kill any germs on your hands. This is a specific recommendation by the World Health Organization, since they employ safety precautions as well as quality control. However, since we are not mass producing and just making either one or a few little spray bottles, we wouldn't have to worry too much about sterilizing our ingredients and equipment. With that said, it is still good practice to please make sure that you are using clean ingredients and sterilized equipment before you start making your homemade hand sanitizer. Also, the reason distilled water is not in this recipe is because it was only meant to dilute alcohol above 90%. So it's not necessary to add distilled water for any alcohol that's below 90%. But if you still want to add hydrogen peroxide, lessen the amount of emollient that you put in and replace it with 3% hydrogen peroxide. For example, for the 10 milliliter of aloe vera that you plan on putting in, if you decide to put 6 milliliter of aloe vera in, then you would put 4 milliliter of hydrogen peroxide. Let's say that you don't have any emollient. Glycerin and aloe vera gel are all sold out, but you do have that 70% alcohol. Then you can try this. Step 1. Just put the whole 70% isopropyl alcohol in a portable spray bottle. Step 2. Spray in your hands and thoroughly cover and rub your hands, fingers, and fingernails. Special note, the reason why I gave a disclaimer earlier is because spraying just alcohol on the skin is not recommended, especially for sensitive and extremely dry skin. Alcohol by itself will dry your skin out, but as I've mentioned, if this is all you have, we will make do with what we have. It is still better than not doing anything. Plus, you will only do this when you absolutely need to do it and there's no soap and water nearby. Step 3. Wait a minute or so to let the alcohol do its work and make sure that your hands are dry. Step 4. Moisturize your hands with a hand cream or ointment. Hand cream such as O'Keeffe's Working Hands hand cream or ointment such as Vaseline. By the way, Everclear also has a 151 proof vodka, so that means that it is 75.5% alcohol. You can also use the 9 parts alcohol to 1 part emollient formula which gives about 68% final alcohol content. Again, you can choose to use it on its own, then follow up with a hand cream or ointment, or you can mix in 1 part of emollient with or without hydrogen peroxide, but it is still advisable to use a moisturizer afterwards, after drying your hands for a minute. Now, let's say that you do not have access to rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, nor high alcohol content of grain alcohol. What do? All you will need is the following: 2 spray bottles, liquid soap, doesn't matter if it's regular or antibacterial, water, tap or purified, or distilled water, and finally, paper towels. In 1 spray bottle, put 2 parts liquid soap and 1 part water. Shake it well. In another spray bottle, fill it up with water. When you think that it's time to clean your hands and there's no nearby restroom, pump 5 sprays on your one hand. Thoroughly and vigorously rub your hands, fingers, and fingernails everywhere. Once you feel the soap dry on your hands, use the water spray bottle and pump 20 sprays on your one hand. Thoroughly and vigorously rub your hands, fingers, and fingernails everywhere. Use a paper towel to wipe your hands, fingers, and fingernails. Repeat steps F to H if needed, until your hands don't feel soapy and sticky. Finally, make sure your hands are completely dry before touching anything, except your face, of course. If still wet, bacteria and viruses can still easily stick to your hands. So, here is my soapy spray, and here's my spray bottle with just water. Yes, this defeats the very purpose of the portability of having a hand sanitizer. Or, however, you can also use a bottled water, but you will definitely be spilling a lot wherever you're at. However, it is still infinitely better than not washing your hands at all with soap and water. Or you can invest in these little portable compact towels. That's what it looks like. Once you wet them with water, it expands. So after you spray your hands with soap, thoroughly and vigorously rubbing everywhere for 20-30 seconds, use a damp portable towel and go ahead and wipe your hands with it so that you'll rinse the bacteria and viruses away. The reason why I have suggested to use a small amount of water in your soap and water spray bottle is that by diluting it with regular tap water, water can go bad in a few days, and you just want enough to last you during that time. You can use distilled water if you like, which should last you for a few weeks and possibly even months. But it depends on how well you are storing your spray, such as not being in direct sunlight. Soap is one of the best weapons against coronavirus. What soap and water does is they remove any potential coronavirus in your hands before they can lead into infection. The coronavirus does not penetrate through skin because our outermost layer is slightly acidic, which prevents most pathogens from entering the body. Soap is effective because, like a crowbar, it pries open the virus's exterior envelope and causes it to degrade. You will then be destroying the coronavirus's crown-like spires, like a king, hence the name. Then those powerful soap molecules then trap tiny fragments of the virus, which then gets rinsed away in water. Now that we have talked about making homemade hand sanitizers, let's talk more about good hand washing techniques. Whether you use soap and water or alcohol-based hand sanitizers, there are 3 things that you need to keep in mind to effectively defeat coronavirus or any virus that could be residing on your hands. Number 1, thoroughly covering your hands, fingers, and fingernails. Number 2, vigorously rubbing your hands, fingers, and fingernails. Number 3, rubbing your hands, fingers, and fingernails for about 20 to 30 seconds. The longer, the better. Special note, in regards to washing with soap and water, rinsing occurs after that minimum of 20 to 30 seconds. It does not matter if you use a bar soap, foam soap, or liquid soap. They all do the same thing. It also does not matter if you use an antibacterial soap or a regular soap, especially in regards to viruses such as coronavirus, because viruses are so fragile that normal soap and alcohol-based hand sanitizer will destroy them. Again, the most important part is that you use soap and that you scrub thoroughly and vigorously for at least 20 seconds. Some final tips. Always be cautious when using a public bathroom door and bathroom sink's faucet. If you're able to, make sure to use a paper towel to open the door handles and operate the bathroom faucets, then discard the paper towel away. As a tip, in your own bathroom faucet, spray undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide. You don't have to wipe it off as it decomposes into oxygen and water. It is also not corrosive, so it's safe to use on metal surfaces. You just need to make sure to leave the hydrogen peroxide on the faucet for at least 1 minute before using it. Well, that's pretty much it. I hope that I have shed some clarification on effectively making your own hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is a great arsenal to have at your disposal to combat coronavirus, but nothing tops the deadly combo of soap and water. Just as long as you thoroughly and vigorously cover and rub your hands, fingers, and fingernails for about 20 to 30 seconds. Then rinse the coronavirus and other bacteria and germs away. Be safe out there. Practice social distancing and be kind to one another. Times are uncertain and even scary. We are all making personal and economic sacrifices as we isolate ourselves to help flatten the curve. And that is not just about statistics. In that curve are our grandparents, parents, children, friends, and loved ones. However, we will all get through this together. Let's not panic and make the best of a tragic situation. We are a resilient species, even resilient than the coronavirus. We will become stronger because of it. I believe in you, and I believe in all of us. Take care, everyone.